Okay.
Hi, I'm Sonia and I'm a staff member from BERNINA World of Sewing, and I have the pleasure to present you the April block from our Quilt Along block of the months. This is our first time that we do this with a camera and send it to you on the web. And I have never done this before, so I hope you're a little patient with me and I will give it a shot. We have two patterns in this month. One is the Montserrat Monday and the other one is Barbados Star. We start with the Montserrat Monday, and we are very lucky that we start with three very common known.
Okay.
We will have the half square triangle. We have quite a lot. Then we will work with the flying geese, with the wing clipper method, where we make 4 flying geese at one time, and the square in the square. All right, so let's start. The first block we're going to do is the Montserrat Monday. And before I start cutting, I want to make myself first familiar with the layout of the cutting pieces I have. You have your pre-cut pieces from the store, and the background fabric you will have to cut and make the decision by yourself. So let's start with the charcoal here. This seems to me very simple. You only have to have 4 pieces. Now you see here in the diagram itself that what you need or is recommended is a 7.5 by 5 3/4 inches. For me, if I add the numbers up, that would be a little bit uncomfortable. So the store added extra size to it, to make extra 1/2 inch or so to make it more comfortable for you. So for example, the store size is 8.5 by 6.5, so that gives you plenty room to square off your piece of fabric. Also, what I would like to know is what goes where for the 2 blocks. So I prefer to go through my pattern. For example, I take the blue here. It says here that for the Montserrat Star, I need 4 3-inch squares. So I would go here and mark my 4 3-inch squares with an M for my Montserrat block. And I go through this for this Montserrat block to every different color. And so I end up with all my color charts, very easily visible what part goes to Montserrat and what part goes to the Barbados Star. For me, that's very easy to identify. Another way you can do this is you can make a chart and you can write this on a piece of paper. That's another way, and this depends what you prefer. The method you want to do it is really how your brain works, if you're more a visual thing or a mathematical person. But it makes it for sure easier when you cut than to sort out the pieces where they go. Okay, let's start with the Montserrat Monday block. It starts on page number 3, and as you can see, we start with the flying geese.
Okay.
We are doing the wing clipper method for flying geese because we need 4 flying geese, and because this method makes us 4 at a time, I think this is perfect. For each set, we need 1 big square and 4 equal small squares, and the measurement is in our handout. We take the big square, mark all the small squares diagonally and pin them exactly on the raw edge diagonally onto the big square. I like to put my pins perpendicular to my drawn line because I think it's more stable and I can pull out the pins as I go when I'm sewing it. After that, we will cut and we will sew 1/4 inch on each side. I have done this here with our colors for the block, and I cut in the middle. It's the same marked line as I had on the small squares. Then I take this and I press the triangles away from the big triangle. Like that. Then I take one of the 2 leftover squares and put this exactly here in the corner of the white triangle and pin this perpendicular down on both of them. Okay, now I go to take them to the sewing machine and sew 1/4 inch on each side of the marked line.
I'm ready.
Okay, I sew now on this side the 1/4 inch. I start here in that corner, not here, and sew this down as you would do. I never sew over a pin. Okay, and I do all 4 sides. Here and these 2 here. So I sewed all 4 lines. And now I'm gonna cut this in the middle on the marked line. And then I press this open. Now I have 4 perfect flying geese. Okay, now we take our wing clipper ruler and I take one of the flying geese, and our finished size is going to be 4.5 by 2.5. So this one here will be the angle, the 90-degree angle I'm gonna line up here, the white part. I try to find the corner and then line this line up here with the seam between white and green. And I move this a little bit. Perfect. Then I take my ruler and trim this down. Okay, and then I turn it around and line up 4.5 by 2.5. Okay, so this is my flying geese here. Okay, and I will cut all the others one too. The next step after the flying geese is making 8 equal triangle squares. We need 8 with red and white. The next part is we make equal triangle squares with white and yellow, and I will show you again how to do equal triangle squares. We take here in this case one white and one yellow fabric, put right side on right side. Before I did that, I marked the yellow fabric with a diagonal line. Then I took it to the sewing machine and sewed on each side a 1/4 inch. I will do this later on the square too. Then I will take my cutter and cut this open. I know you have done this many times and you know exactly what to do. So we have our squares and they're ready to make a pinwheel. Now, before you press your the seams on your pinwheels, I would like that you pay attention to the page number 4. There is Rose's method, and there's another method how you can put this together, and this is entirely up to you. If you do it the way Rosie has it here, and Rosie is the designer from our block of the month, in case you don't know, she presses her seam allowance towards the yellow. And for me then, when you have all 4 together, it's quite thick. She has this little trick here with opening up part of the seam, your last seam, and to flatten it out, and it looks kind of like a spiral. I like to press my seams open because I think it's easier to put it together for me, and I have a flat center. How the 2 of them look like on the back, you can see here. Roses has all the seams here pressed towards the yellow, and then opens here, as here in the diagram, small parts of your last sewn seam, and then you swirl them kind of around clockwise or counterclockwise. And I press everything open, and for me this is much more flat than here, and I really think you should try them out and try this out, these 2 methods on a little strap fabric, I'm sorry, and see which one is easier for you. They both look okay from both sides. The accuracy is as accurate as you are sewing. I, for now, will stick to my preferred method on pressing the seams open. Okay, then I'll lay out my squares the way they're going to be sewn together. Okay. Check one more time with the pattern here. So I sew these 2 together and these 2 together.
Okay.
Okay. I line up the 2 the way yeah, we start over, David.
No,
Here.
you're good.
I take these 2 here and line up the corners as accurately as I can, and then I reach over to here and feel the seam, how that they come on top of each other, and then I put the pin in the same direction as the seam is. Put the pin here, and I always put the pin perpendicular to the seam I'm gonna sew, so this will not end up like this when I'm done. Okay, and I will do the same thing with these 2. I switched my foot here to a 57 with the guide. This is my absolute favorite foot because I know I'm gonna have a perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance. the next one. It's going to be here. Okay, and now I go and press the seam open.
Okay.
Okay, so I open this up and press this also open. And you see here I have a perfect meeting of all the three pieces. And the same here. The way I pin these two pieces together, I go exactly in the point and make sure that I'm on here on the side, I'm also on the point where the two meet. And I do the same here, that it comes out right at the point here. And you can feel it, it's very easy, it's not hard to get through the layers because you want to be in the seam here. And then I make sure that this is level here. And I pin this together again in the direction of the seam up there, like that. And I pin this here straight, and sew my 1/4 inch seam all the way down. Okay.
Stop.
Okay. When I come to the center here, I press this very hard down. And because I can see now that my pin is exactly coming where it's supposed to be, my needle will go exactly down in the corner. Okay. Almost done. Now take this out and press my seam. Okay, and then I press this open too. Okay, my iron is not hot enough. But see, this is much flatter than if you have the seams around. But as I said, this is my personal preference. You do it the way you like to do it. I just wanted to show you another way.
Okay. I stopped it.
In the center.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. With the pinwheel, if you paid close attention, you might have seen that I did not cut the equal triangle squares down to 2.5 inches. And I did this on purpose. Being me, the one of you who know me know that I like to do my own way. But why I did this is the following. I know that when I sew these 4 blocks together, I can make a pinwheel 1 inch, cut everything off, and it still will be a correct pinwheel. So if I didn't cut these back to 2.5 inches, I knew that my pinwheel, after I sew all 4 blocks together, would be way too big. But it also gave me the assurance that at the end, when I have all 4 together, I have more or plenty room to cut this down to 4.5 inches. And as you can see here, I can cut almost about maybe not quite 1/2 inch off. But if I would have cut these before, I might not have the exact corners here. And here my diagonal line is exactly in the corner where it has to be. And it's very easy to square this off. if you put the number of 2 1/4 exactly in the center, and you see here it says 2 1/4, here's 2 1/4, here the line of 2 1/4 is perpendicular, can I say it, straight. Now I'm ready to cut this to 4 1/2 inches, as they say my square has to be. And nobody will able to tell that I did not square my squares off when I was supposed to do it. Okay, we're all done.
Okay.
Okay, I laid out all my pieces, what I had so far, like a puzzle, and this diagram shows me exactly how to put this together. So the first thing I did was sew the black triangles onto my pinwheel. After I do that, then I will add the 4 triangles, the white triangles, onto the long side of the black triangles, and create the center square. Then I sew the red half square triangle onto the flying geese, and then I chose the top and the bottom as being the long side, and here I'm gonna add the single white square. Then I will put these onto here, onto the side, and then add the whole top and the bottom all over the whole length, and that will finish my block. I hope you're gonna have as much fun as I did, and we take a little break, and then we start the foundation piecing block, Barbados Star. Hello, I hope everybody had a nice break and hopefully a good cup of coffee. In my case, a cup of coffee with a cookie. And now we are ready to do the Barbados Star. I think it's a beautiful star, and I can finally remember the name of the block. And it's going to be sewn in paper foundation, what is one of my favorite methods for sewing. If you look here on page number 7, you have a table or a list with all the colors and the sizes again, and where these pieces of fabric will go. Your pattern has numbers in the diagram, so it's very easy to find the orange, because here's a color, and also it has the same letter and number as on this list here in the pattern. Before we can work with the pattern, I recommend that you take a ruler and check one more time that you have really your 1 inch. We check the 1 inch square, and I also check that I have the outside of the pattern, not with the seam allowance, just a finished size pattern, that this is really a 3 inch square. After I check that now, I take my pattern and I cut it apart. Here I don't have a choice than doing it in the center. In the outside of the patterns, I added about a 1/4 inch to the existing seam allowance line. It's much easier if you have more paper and then can trim the block to the actual size, including the fabric, than if your foundation is exactly what you want. Okay, I'm ready to start sewing. I take one pattern and take one each of the fabrics. Here I have 2 triangles, because in the background it says that I need 4 squares. They are going to be cut in triangles, and that's what I did. My turquoise, my orange and 2 whites. Okay, I see you at the sewing machine.
Okay.
The first thing I do when I do foundation, I make a setup who is comfortable for me, because I will repeat the same motion over and over, so I don't want to go up and down from my chair all the time. We have to be able to cut, we have to be able to press, and of course to sew. I added here a little piece of plastic. This works very well and helps. I think it helps a lot when you fold the paper. You will see this in action soon. And then to press the seams, there is this little tiny tool here, very practical. You go over the seam, or you can use your finger. I prefer my iron. Also, to cut the seam allowances back, you can either use a ruler, or there is a 1/4 inch ruler who will stop at the fold of the paper, and then you don't have to pay attention to the measurements of the ruler. The sewing machine setup is going to be a little bit different. If you have a straight stitch foot, like for example the 37 foot, you can use that. It's a big advantage if you see the line you're going to sew on all the way to the needle. I prefer my 20 foot, and I set the machine up here in moving the needle position all the way to the right. And if you look here, then I can use the inside of the toe as the guide to my line, and the needle will be absolutely coming down on the black line. Try out the different methods and choose your favorite foot. I ordered here my fabric in the order I gonna sew it. So my first fabric I need is it's the black. Then the second one are 2 whites, and the third, the fourth is the teal, the fifth is the red, and then the 2 whites. So I didn't need to bring this. I will put this back. The very principle of foundation piecing is that we sew on the side where the print is, and we have the luxury of having the colors of the fabric who is going to cover that area too. The fabric itself will go on the back side, and if you hold your paper against the light, it's very easy to see where the different fabric colors will gonna be. I prefer to pin my fabric. There some people prefer to glue it, but for me it's just messy, and so I use a flat head pin or a flower pin that will not interfere with like a pin head would when I sew. I try to, if this is my first fabric, I try to have the grain line in the axis of the piece I gonna sew. So I turn this piece, my pattern, to the back side where there's no printed lines, and place this over the area I want to sew. And this is very easy. If you turn this around again, you can see the shadow very well of the black fabric. You see this is pretty big. I make sure that my piece of fabric is past the seam allowance line here, because I want to make sure I have the fabric in the seam allowance when I sew my blocks together. Okay, so I take this down and pin this. Okay, now my next fabric is going to be this triangle, 2 here. So this is going to be on this side sewn right side on right side. And I forgot to tell you that the first fabric is always right side up. That's very important. After that, it's right side on right side. So to see how I have to line this up, I put this back, take my plastic piece, and fold the paper on the line I'm gonna sew next, like that. You can see how easy this is to fold over something than not just trying to find the line of the paper. Then you can use your 1/4" ruler and glide this against the fold of the paper. And then we cut this 1/4" seam away. You can do this as easy with your ruler if you don't have one of these. These are not very expensive and really make it a little bit easier. All right, so we are on the so I turn this around. We are on the fabric side again. So the number 2 piece is going to be this one. This long side is going to be along here. So I take this piece here and just line it up on this line here. Make sure again that I'm over the 1/4" here on the outside. Now you can pin this down also. Okay, then I put this under the sewing machine, and very important is that you start, this is my line here, that's what I'm gonna sew, that you start 2 or 3 stitches before and 2 or 3 stitches after, because we have a 2mm stitch length. If you prefer, you can make it a little bit shorter. This will be enough because you stitch in one of the next seams then over and secure these small stitches. Okay, so I put this underneath here. Come on. And now I'll line this, the inside of my foot up on my printed line. And sew on the line. You can see I can use this as a guide, and that's very easy like that. I go 2, 3 stitches past. And I cut the thread. And I personally would not recommend that you make a secure stitch because it's really not necessary. Now you have to, we flip this over, and you have to take your option of how you want to press this. You can of course finger press it, or you can use this little rolling thing. I personally like to take this out, or I melt the pin. I prefer my iron because I really have a chance to go all the way here in the seam allowance, and I don't make a pleat. All right, so our next piece, C3, is going to be again our background fabric. First, we have to cut the seam allowance. So I take my plastic piece and line it here on my next seam line. Bend this over, take my ruler, and trim this off. Then I take my triangle, my second triangle, right side and right side, and line it up with the raw edge of the black fabric. Okay. And we're ready to sew again. I know that some of you prefer the stitch lengths a little bit shorter I make mine 2 millimeter just in case I have to open some stitches. And the difference between 1.75 and 2 millimeters is a lot, so I played safe. Okay. You can see here when I pinned, I moved the white fabric a little bit, but this doesn't bother me. I want to make sure that I have here 1/8 of an inch, and that's much more than 1/8 of an inch, so nothing will happen. Okay, our next piece here is gonna be 4, so that would be the blue. And we put this right side on right. Oh no, sorry. First I have to cut the fabric back. You see, it's always the same motion we are doing. Bending over, cutting, lining up and sewing. And then we start over. So this is the blue. We do right side on right side. Okay. You can see now clearly how I sew over the previous seam, so the stitches are really sewn down quite nicely. Okay. Okay, and now I continue. Let me do one more, and then I think you know what you have to do. And we will see how the finished square looks like. So this one is the next one, 5. If I have too many stitches here, just press them down. Okay. Then I take the red and line this up here. Again, make sure that I'm covered all the paper. All right. I'm sorry that this is so quiet, but there's really nothing new to explain. All right. So this was the red. And now we put on each side a white one. So I put the first corner with the background fabric here, and then I trimmed the side here for the second corner, so I'm ready to put my last background corner on my first square. Okay. So this is my first square not trimmed. Sorry, I made a wrinkle here. All right. Now if I turn this around and hold it against the light, you see I have plenty material all over around that. I know I have my fabric at least a 1/4 inch in the seam allowance then. And when we sew the blocks together, or the different blocks, the 4 blocks together, then you will see how important that is, because if you have less than a seam allowance, the 1/4 inch seam allowance here, it kind of curls up and it does not will stay flat. Okay, we have 3 more to go. We have finished all 4 squares, and one of them I did trim back to the 3.5 by 3.5, and it looks so pretty and exact with this foundation. Very important, I still have not taken out the paper, even the one I already have trimmed back. Taking the paper out will be the very last thing we're gonna do. So here I will trim the next one, and I'm gonna trim this back to 3.5 by 3.5 inches. I will take the 1/4 inch seam allowance and put this onto the finished size of my block, the outline of the finished size. Okay. Right, and then I turn this around to 3.5 by 3.5 here, and cut these 2 sides. Okay. I trimmed them all, and the next step will be that I take my pattern and I will arrange them in the right order. Okay. Now you make 2 pairs, you sew 2 together, either horizontal or 2 together vertical. That's up to you, it doesn't really make any difference. I kind of like to put them like this together. Now I take a pin and I go through the corner here and find the corner here on the other one. And if you've trimmed your paper accurately, then you really, if you have on one corner the pin, in one corner the corner marked right and correctly, you should be able to just line up the paper, and then if you go here straight through, you will start here on the line and come out here, you see, exactly on the black line too. So I did a pretty good job. So I did pin this together, and here, because here no, I have the 2 corners, I put a pin here around the corner. Okay, now I start sewing here and sew these 2 together. All right, we are ready to sew this together. I changed the foot again. I switched to the 57 foot with the guide, or whatever the number is of your 1/4 inch foot. Because I know that this is exactly a 1/4 inch, I feel very comfortable just lining the paper up here or pushing it against my guide. And I also made the stitch length a little bit longer, I think about 2.25 or so. And now I'm sewing with my 1/4 inch foot exactly on the line. Now here I come to the part where all the seams are on top of each other. So I try to press this down a little bit and maybe slow down. I'm not a very fast sewer anyway, so. Okay. Let's see how this looks like. Not too bad. So we have one side finished.
Okay.
You can see now that I really need the 1/4 inch of the fabric, that this will be flat down. Okay. Not perfect, but pretty good.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, now I will put these two together. Okay. Let's see how this will turn out. Okay. Almost. Okay. We take it to the ironing board. Okay, this looks pretty good too. Finger press this open. Okay. Right. And now I take these two and sew them together here. Yes, we have the color opposite yellow and the black is opposite. Okay, now we put these two together. And we start here in the center, in the seam. And again, if you put your needle right through the seam, not through the fabric, it's very easy to go through and you know you're at the right place. And then I line up the paper again. And before I put the pin in, I check here, right next by the seam allowance, if when I go straight through, I'm on both sides coming out on the printed line. If I do that, I put my pin in there. And then I do the same here. The same, this is good too. Then I can take this out. Now I line up my corners and check like if I'm in the corner here, not quite, so I move this down to where I want it. And put a few more pins in the two blocks. Okay. Okay, let's do a couple more. Oh, this is not quite right. Okay. All right, that will do.
Okay.
Some underneath here. Here again over the seams, try to press down a little. Okay. Okay, let's see.
Okay.
Okay. Very nice. Oops. The thread just got caught here. Well, okay. Now we press this open. We have our block, the Barbados Star. I really like that one. Now, I probably would leave the paper in until I start sewing all the blocks together somewhere in the fall. If you want to take the paper out, let me show you how I'm doing this. I tear it off and then go towards the seam and fold it a couple times. And then you want to hold on to the stitches and just tear the paper out. So the next one would then be here. I fold it and tear carefully out with having my finger press down the stitches. If you're in a bee, that's the perfect job to bring to the bee because it's very messy and you don't have to clean up. Your hostess will have to do that. Okay, but there's really not an advantage if you take them out. If you make a wall hanging with paper piecing, I usually leave the paper in because it stabilizes a little bit. If you use this and you wash this quilt, then I would not recommend it. Well, that's it for today, and we managed to finish our 2 April blocks, and I hope you had fun and you could get something out of my instruction. I had a lot of fun, and good luck.